أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. So hopefully this inshallah will be the last discussion and the last lecture for this series inshallah. There's a lot to discuss on this topic, but I feel that we have discussed enough. We just pray to Allah to give us the tawfiq to be able to act upon what we have said. Yeah. Now, we discussed in the previous discussion the collaboration between the Shias and the Sunnis in the earlier first 3 centuries. Yeah. Today we plan to discuss the 4th century and onwards. But before I get into that, I would like to share this message from Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Tayyib, who is the head of Al Azhar. He gave these lectures, this there on his website. He gave these lectures in the month of Ramadan. It was recorded lectures which was broadcasted from the television. The transcript is there on his website. So this is where I'm taking it from. Yeah, the message is so relevant to our discussion, and that's what I thought to start with. So he starts by saying that he's emphasizing on the necessity of maintaining etiquette and respect amongst the different schools and between differing opinions. Okay. So he's trying to say that there should be respect and tolerance and some kind of etiquette when it comes to differing opinions. We should respect each other's opinions, something we have been emphasizing a lot. Now, the important message he gives is here. He says that when we lost the etiquette of disagreement, we lost our way. And this is something I've emphasized also previously when we were discussing the civilization discussion. When we accepted diversity and we were intellectually disagreeing with each other, we were really prospering. But the moment we lost this etiquette, we lost our way. Okay, and this is exactly what he's also trying to say. And really, we have lost our way big time. Today, if you ask the Islamic Ummah what's its identity, we don't know our identity at all. Yeah, at times the Muslims are not even proud to say they're Muslims anymore because we have lost our identity. Yeah. Then he goes further by saying that the first step. So he's saying that if we want to create this understanding again, the first step is to stop mutual insults. And this is something we have been also discussing, that we should agree to disagree rather than insulting each other. And going further to the level we go, we have already discussed all that. He's saying that, stressing that such behavior, the insults, have turned our nation, one nation, into enemies. Now we don't need enemies from outside. We are enough enemies for ourselves. Okay, this is the Muslim Ummah, what we are facing. He said that reigniting strife between Shia and Sunni is highly explosive and influential trigger, which is precisely what the enemy desires and actively pursues, relying on the principle of divide and rule. Okay. Then he goes further by saying that sectarian differences, when they deviate from the legitimate framework. So the legitimate framework is the intellectual disagreement. We can have intellectual disagreements, and that's fine, as long as we respect each other and as we're not insulting each other. Now, when we forget this principle, then it can lead to dangerous outcomes. And we are seeing this in the Ummah today. Yeah? Then he goes on quoting the hadith of the Prophet that who is a Muslim, and he's trying to emphasize that we are all Muslims. Why are we after each other? Okay. Then he goes further by saying that it's not in the interest of the enemies of the Muslims for us to unite as Muslims. They don't want us to unite. Okay, because one strong Muslim nation can do what and what. Okay. Then he makes a very important statement. He says that they strive through their cunning efforts to keep the Muslims in a state of drowning, lifting them up slightly to breathe before submerging them again. Okay? This statement can be a series by itself of how much these enemies pretended that they're friends of Muslims. They come, they shake hands, and then later they hit you from behind also. This is exactly what we're seeing also in the Middle East at the moment. Yeah, the president of the United States goes to the Middle East, showing that he's the friend. That's the first tour he takes. He's a friend of the Arabs. Okay, and then there was a discussion that he has backstabbed Israel and all whatnot. And what did it come out from? Okay, the discussion that all what it did was that he showed that he's a friend of the Arabs, taking and milking trillions of dollars from them, and then humiliating them in the end. See the humiliation these Arab leaders are going through. The flotilla is going at the moment. The flotilla Medellin, which went to Gaza, it was stopped. None of the Western leaders spoke. None of the Arab leaders even had the courage to utter a word. Okay, leave alone that. The Arab ministers, the same Arab ministers who donated $400 million jet. Okay, they wanted to. They gave trillions of dollars to Trump. Okay, they wanted to go to Ramallah, not even Gaza. They wanted to go to Ramallah, where the Palestinian Authority is. Okay, to meet Mahmoud Abbas, who's nobody in Palestine. He's just destroying the Palestinians even more. They wanted to go meet him. They need to take permission from the Israelis, and then they even refused to get into that. Then they refused to enter. This is the humiliation the Ummah is going through. Okay, further than that, and this is really shameful, really shameful. Okay, this was not there in the mainstream news, but when I was reading the news, They're saying that, so you notice that they made these Arabs sign the Abraham Accords. Yeah, so there's a discussion now going on that the Syrian government also should sign the Abraham Accords. So Palestine now is left alone. All the neighbors basically have abandoned Palestine altogether. Okay, inside they make noises, outside when they reach in front of the media, they're totally nothing. They're useless altogether. Okay, so through these Abraham Accords now, you have Morocco in this period where there's a massacre and the slaughter happening in Gaza. Okay, the starvation is happening in Gaza. They are conducting a joint military exercise with the Zionists. This is where the Ummah is reached. This is the humiliation we are going through. Okay, so in their joint exercise, the military exercise, not only that, they simulated as if they were in Gaza. So they went inside tunnels, and that's how the military exercise took place. And this Morocco is taking part in all this. Now, you don't like Hamas, you don't like Islamic Brotherhood, okay, you don't like them, but this whole Ummah is dying. All these people are being starved and being killed. Where are you? At least have some sort of shame. None. Okay, this is what Sheikh Ahmad Tayyib is discussing. That they give you hands and they tell you sign accords and sign accords, but actually they want to submerge you and they want to humiliate you altogether. Okay, and then finally he ends with this message of Dar al-Taqrib, the house of rapprochement and collaboration, which was started by Al-Azhar's head Sheikh Shaltut in 1949 with the Iranian scholar Muhammad Taqi Qummi. Yeah, this lasted for 8-9 years. It didn't go further than that. I wish it can go further than this, inshallah. So this was the message I felt it was necessary to share before I get into the examples. Yeah. So example number one. Example of collaboration. Now we'll be giving 6-7 examples of collaboration between Shias and Sunnis in history. So the first example is narrating hadith from each other. Now the reason I bring it here is because in the classical times, you notice we didn't have pen and papers and books and all that yet to write down. Rather, there was no computers, there was no databases and all what we have today. It was more hadith was narrated via ijaza. Okay, so a teacher would give ijaza to a student to keep on narrating that hadith. So this practice continued till almost 150 years ago. Some scholars in Iran still had ijaza from some of the teachers to narrate hadith also. Okay, so they become sahib ijaza. The way we have ijaza in ijtihad today, they had ijaza of transmitting hadith. Now, as we go further, you will see that Shias and Sunnis were giving this ijaza to each other also. Okay, so the hadith now, if you go to the classical period, this is the first, second, and the third century, the hadith of the Shia books have narrators who are Sunnis, okay, who are Zaydis, who are Fathiyya, who are Waqifiyya, who are from the non-Imamiyya sect, okay, and the Shias accepted hadith from them, okay, and this is Sheikh Tusi talking about that. Now, I'm aware that there is a lot of discussions in Rijal. The ulama of hadith discuss a lot of conditions. So inshallah, if we discuss some rijali discussions in the future, we can discuss these conditions that whose hadith should be accepted, whose hadith should be rejected, the ahlul bid'ah and non-ahlul bid'ah, and all these discussions which they have. Okay, but what I'm trying to show is that at least some kind of hadith was accepted in both the corpuses. Okay, so this is a Sunni scholar, Allama Dhahabi, in his Mizan al-I'tidal. He talks about Aban ibn Taghlib. Notice he calls him Shi'iyun Jaldun. Okay, he was a rigid and a staunch Shi'i, but lakinnahu saduq, he was trustworthy. So we accept his truthfulness and we reject his innovation. So they accepted his hadith. Okay, now notice he quotes Ibn Uday or Ibn Adi. He says kana ghaliyan fit tashayyu', the way they describe him. He was a ghali, okay, he was an extremist in his tashayyu, in his Shiism, but still they accepted hadith from him. So Allama Dhahabi then goes on to question himself. He says, but somebody might ask this question, that how come we're accepting hadith from innovators? Now, strangely, hadith of Khawarij and them in the Sunni corpus is accepted a bit easier. This is another discussion, but how do we accept the hadith of an innovator? Okay, because in hadith you need trustworthiness and you need adala, okay, and justice. So which an innovator doesn't have. So how do we accept the hadith? So then he goes on explaining there are two types of bid'ah, which is not our discussion. What I'm interested in is his last statement. He says, فَلَوْ رُدَّ حَدِيث هَؤُلَاء. Okay, so if we were to reject the hadith of the likes of Aban bin Taghlib, that means the Shi'as, okay, لَذَهَبَ جُمْلَةٌ مِّنَ الْآثَارِ النَّبَوِيَّةِ صلى الله عليه وآله. Okay, a portion of hadith of the Prophet would go away and would not reach us the way it has reached us today. Okay, and this is وَهَذِهِ مَفْسَدَةٌ بَيِّنَةٌ, and this would have harmed us. Okay, now before I go further, those who say that Shias don't quote hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is an example. Aban ibn Taghlib quoting hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and Allama Dhahabi accepts that if these hadith of the Shias would have been rejected, then a portion of hadith of the Prophet would have not reached us. Okay, now when it comes to Shia books, we delete the further chain which goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the way we trust the Imams alayhi salam. Okay, that's the only difference. Otherwise, we quote from the Prophet. Okay, so this was one area. The second area which I was discussing is the issue of teacher-student relationship. This was a beautiful relationship which was there till almost the 9th, 10th century, 9th century Hijrah. And I'll mention politics again, wallahi. This politics and political leaders, wallahi, they don't want the Muslim Ummah to unite. But this was a beautiful thing, okay? That students would, Shia students would be would have Sunni teachers, and Sunni students would have Shia teachers. This was something unique at that period. Today, this would be considered, bid'ah, or it would be considered as altogether misguidance. Now look at Sheikh Mufid. This is Ibn Kathir mentioning it. Ibn Kathir says that he even praises. Now, the knowledge and the piety of Sheikh Mufid is not questioned. Okay, this is something even the Sunni scholars accepted. Now notice he goes further. He says, وَكَانَ مَجْلِسُهُ يَحْضُرُهُ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْعُلَمَاء مِنْ سَائِرِ الطَّوَائِفِ. Okay, he says that the lessons, okay, of Sheikh Mufid were being attended by ulama of different strands and different sects. You get me? Okay, so his students were non-Shias, even Sunnis included. Okay, then Ibn Hajar also goes on further by saying that many students graduated under his tutorship. These are, even the Sunnis also participated in this kind of learning. Come to Sheikh Tusi. So Agha Buzurg Tehrani discusses Sheikh Tusi. He says that amongst his teachers, he mentions 4 teachers. He says that his teachers, again, notice, he had ijazah from them. That means his teachers were given him the ijazah to quote hadith. Okay, can you see this? Okay, now, 4 teachers. Abu al-Hussein, okay, al-Sawar al-Maghribi, a Sunni teacher. Abu Ali al-Shadhan, a theologian, okay, he was a mutakallim, he was a Sunni teacher of the Sheikh. Another Abu Mansur al-Sukari, he is a Sunni or a Zaydi. Can you see this? Okay, and then the final one is a companion of Sayyid Murtada also. That means the scholars were studying with Sunni scholars also. Can you see this beauty happening, which is missing out today, wallahi? Come to Ibn Futi or Ibn Fawti. Again, I'm sorry I'm mispronouncing. I'm very weak, as I mentioned in these, pronouncing these names. So Ibn Futi was a Sunni scholar. Okay, now look at what Allama Dhahabi talks about him. He praises him. Okay, he says, Alim al-Bari' al-Mutqin al-Muhaddith al-Hafidh al-Mufid. Okay, he was a scholar, he was a hadith narrator, he was a memorizer. As I say, Hafidh was very important in that period. It was also beneficial also. So he was somebody praised in the Sunni world. Okay, he was a Hanbali scholar. Now, Sheikh Rasul Ja'fariyan talks about it. He says that Ibn Futi had a Hanbali scholar had a beautiful relationship. As we go further, we'll mention what happened. His relationship with the Irbili and the Al Taus family. Okay, Al Taus means the family of Sayyid ibn Taus. They were so close to each other that he had a teacher who was from the Al Taus family also. Now, this relationship between Sunni and Shia scholarship went to a level that a Shafi scholar, which I'll give the example, he wanted to be buried in the shrine of the 7th Wali Imam alayhi salam, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Can you see this relationship? Today it's missing out, unfortunately. Okay, so this is the scholar Sheikh Rasul Ja'fariyan is talking about, Imaduddin al-Marandi al-Shafi'i. Okay, he died 680 Hijrah. He's a Shafi'i. He comes to Baghdad. Okay, he's a teacher in the Sunni schools. Okay, but he wishes to be buried in the presence of the shrine of the 7th Holy Imam. This is the relationship they had with each other. Okay, let's go further. So this is again Ibn Futi. He arrived in Baghdad. Okay, he stayed very strangely or beautifully. He stayed in the Ja'fariya district. That means he stayed in the vicinity of the Shias. This is a Sunni scholar. Okay, his teacher. Okay, look at his teacher, Ghiyath-ud-Din Abdul Karim ibn Tawus, from the same Ibn Tawus family. He was his teacher. They were so close to each other that some researchers within the Sunni world have started saying that he's a Shia now. Okay, but it has been refuted. It's known unanimously that he was a Hanbali Sunni scholar. Can you see this? The relationship reaches to a level that they're considered part of them. As we'll go further with Shaytani, we'll see that he was considered a Sunni now. Okay, this was Allama Futi, Ibn Futi. Now Allama Hilli. Come to Allama Hilli. This is the 8th century. Again, he had ijazah from the Shia scholars and from the Sunni scholars. One of those Sunni scholars who he had ijazah from to narrate hadith, and he was his teacher, was Sheikh Najmuddin al-Qazwini, who was a Shafi'i scholar. Can you see this? Now, Sheikh Allama Hilli talks about him. Look at how he describes him. If today we were to go describing Sunni scholars like this, we would be killed. We would be butchered. And this is something I faced it personally myself. I remember once I gave a talk and I referred to Sunni scholars. are referred to as Imam, yeah? So Imam Razi, Imam Ghazali, Imam, whoever Imam, okay? So I use the same respect for them. Okay, these are scholars, we have to respect them, be it Shias, be it Sunnis. Okay, so when I use the same terms, Imam, some of my Shia brothers turn back to me and they're like, you're using the term Imam for them. Okay, this is where it has reached. But look at what scholarship has reached, what our scholarship was. So this is Allama Hilli. Notice the way he describes this teacher, who's a Sunni Shafi'i teacher, one of the best scholars of the Shafi'i school, was the most fair-minded in discussions. That means they were having discussions together. Today you have a discussion with a Sunni or Shia, or Sunni should have with a Shia. Allah knows what will happen. Yeah. Come to Shaykh Awwal, again in the 8th century. Now it goes further. Now this is what I had mentioned, that those scholars from the Levant, okay, from the greater Levant, that means the greater Syria, their connection with the Sunnis is even more. And that is why you will see that the scholars from this greater Syria area, they have more connection with the Sunnis. Okay, so Shaykh Awwal, because he was from Jabal Amil, from Lebanon, okay, look at what he comes up with 40 Sunni teachers. Allahu Akbar. Today, if you do that, what will happen? Okay, 40 Sunni teachers. His classes were filled with students from the Sunni sect. Yeah, this is where it had reached. Shahid Thani now becomes even more interesting. Okay, this is now going towards the 9th and 10th century, and this is where it stops now. He was strange that because he used to teach the 5 schools of law. In the morning, he would teach the Sunni madhab, the fiqh according to the Sunni madhab, and he would evidence it. He was even a scholar in their fiqh. And at night, he would teach the Imamiyya fiqh. This was interesting. Okay, and thus his students were Sunnis also to the level. Notice that أن بعض الناس كان يتهم الشيخ في زمن حياته بالتسنن. His relationship with the Sunnis was so great that in his lifetime, some of the Shia scholars and some of the Shias accused him of being a Sunni. This is where our scholarship had reached. What has happened today, Allah knows better. Now, somebody might say that, oh, he was killed by a fatwa of a mufti also. Now, this is where I come and say that when we look at things from a very smaller prism, we will only look at his death and the death of these 2 shaheeds. But when we look at the greater picture and the impact they have, that is what we are discussing. Now, what transpired that after this period now, after Shaykh Thani, now we come to Sayyid Abdul Hussein Sharafuddin. So this is very contemporary. What happens? So here is the time when the Safavids and the Ottomans come up. Okay, Safavids representing a Shia version of Islam, and the Ottomans manifesting the Sunni Islam. They were loggerheads with each other like cats and dogs. Okay, that's my humble opinion. This is where everything came and stopped. Okay, if you read the history of the Safavids and you read the history of the Ottomans, as much as some of the Sunni brothers will be very that thing that, oh, Ottoman Empire and Ottoman Khilafah had so many, especially within the sect, okay, within its Muslims, we had a lot of issues. Outside, yes, it was a Khilafah, but inside, there were fightings going on, okay, and these conquests and all this, which again is a discussion by itself, okay. Now, I want to end this portion with Sayyid Sharafuddin's statement. Notice this is a beautiful statement if we can act upon it. He says, فَلَا تَقُولُوا نَحْنُ سُنَّةٌ وَالشِّيَعَةٌ. He's telling the Muslims, don't say we are Sunnis or Shias. Say we are Muslims. بَلْ قُولُوا نَحْنُ مُسْلِمُونَ. This is if you can take this as a summary of the whole series, okay? This is basically the conclusion of the whole series. He says that it's politics which is dividing us into Shias and Sunnis. Islam is not dividing us. Islam wants to unite us. And we discussed this, Allah's vision and our vision. Okay, so Islam wants to unite us, but it's the politics and the politicians who want to divide us. Okay, this was teacher and student relationship. The third area of collaboration, which I'll not go further into that, is summarizing each other's books. So Shias would summarize Sunnis books and Sunnis would summarize Shias books. Okay, and these are the examples which I will not get into. Again, you will notice till 8th, 9th century, further than that, you don't see that again, apparently. The fourth beautiful sunnah which was happening between the scholars was writing letters to each other. Okay, so Biruni and Avicenna being the Shia scholar, in scientific matters. Okay, no problem. Khaja Nasiruddin also used to be a philosopher who used to discuss with a Shafi'i philosopher on the topic of science. Okay, they were discussing on issues. They had discussions with each other and they were writing letters to each other. Now, the writing is important. This is what I want to stress upon, that the letters written to each other were so respectful. Okay, so look at what Khaja writes. He says, Sa'ala Maulana, okay, our master, okay, Allamatul Asr. He was the luminary of the age. He was the knowledgeable of the age. Look at how the scholars are describing the other scholars. Can you see this? Okay. Da'iyatul mukhlis. He was a mukhlis, he was sincere da'i. Okay? Then you have the third example is the exchange between Sayyid Sharafuddin and Sheikh Salim al-Bishri, one of the sheikhs of Al-Azhar at that time. Look at now, some people will be these letters have eventually become the book Al-Muraja'at we have today. Some people question this book. They say, oh, Al-Muraja'at and all whatnot. But what I'm emphasizing is on the respectful dialogue and discussion. When you see that when they even differ with each other, they respectfully differ with each other. This is important. And look at how Sheikh Sayyid Sharafuddin discusses about this scholar, Sheikh Salim. Okay, he says that this is in the introduction of Al Muraja'at. If you refer to it, you will see this. He says that my heart was hitting. I was like looking at the Ummah and the situation. I was like, what's the Ummah going through? Okay, so he then he decides to travel to Egypt to meet a scholar from the Sunni school so that they can share with each other, okay, and bring this unity together. Okay, so then he travels to Egypt. Now, look at the way he describes the scholar, Sheikh Salim al-Bishri, this Sunni scholar. He says, Allah united me with one of the Egypt's prominent scholars. He was endowed with aql wasi', khulq wadi', fu'ad hayy, ilm alim, manzil rafi. Wallahi, ya Allah. If you see the way he's praising him today, if you praise a Sunni like this, what will happen? Or a Sunni praises a Shia scholar like this. Notice, a scholar with broad intellect, aql wasi'. His akhlaq was beautiful. Okay, he had a lively heart, fu'ad hayy. Okay, and he was not only alim, he had ilmun alim. Okay, he was profound in his knowledge. And then he discusses his position also. Okay, then he discusses Egypt and he praises Egypt, and eventually they come and say that they started complaining to each other about the situation the Ummah is going through, and they say that Shia and Sunnis are one. We have the commonalities which are together. Why do we want to separate? Okay, this was the message Sayyid Sharafuddin gave. And the last letter, a letter from the head of Sheikh of Al-Azhar to Sheikh to Ayatollah Burjardi. Okay, Sheikh Abdul Majid Salim. This is Ayatollah Subhani quoting this letter. He was a student of Ayatollah Burjardi. When Ayatollah Burjardi got sick, the Sheikh of Al-Azhar writes a letter to the head of the Shias, Ayatollah Burjardi. Okay, he tells him, we are deeply saddened by your illness. The news we heard that you are sick. We pray to Almighty to give you recovery. But notice, he then praises him. نعرفه فيكم من العلم والفضل والإخلاص للحق. This is a Sunni scholar now praising a Shia scholar. Okay, we see knowledge in you, we see virtue in you, and we see sincerity in you in serving the truth. And this is where I come and say that Shias and Sunni scholars have to realize that not all within the Shias are having agenda against the Sunnis, and not all within the Sunnis have agenda against the Shias. No, they are pure people within both groups. And these are the people who need to unite together, come together, take the Ummah in front. Okay. Number 5 is performing ceremonies and rituals together, a sign of unity. This was something which was really emphasized in the early second and the third century. You notice that all what we quoted in the previous discussion, the imams were emphasizing, go pray with them, attend their funerals, attend the sick, go visit them, and all what. These are the rituals which were really being emphasized. Now, as we go further, we hardly see any examples then. Okay, now I'm not saying this is not a norm. It was left altogether, but it's become very rare. So when you go through the books of Hadith, of the books of history, you will hardly find these examples. So one example I bumped into was this. Okay, because all what Ibn Kathir and Ibn Jawzi mention, they mention all these Shia Sunni issues which happened till the 6th century. All what they mention, majority is the fights and the violence which happened between these two groups. In between now you find these examples. Okay, so one of those examples is this. This happened in the mid 5th century Hijrah. The Shia and Sunni, after a period of violence, they now decided to make peace. And this is the barakah of peace, wallahi. They decided to make peace. They decided to visit the graves of Imam Ali and Imam Hussein together, Shias and Sunnis. Do you see this? This is the beauty. Today, some people will accuse, oh, shirk and this and that and all that. No, the Sunnis used to visit these graves. Yes, there's some things which are happening, which are not supposed to be happening there, which we agree. But this going to these places, visiting these shrines, the Sunnis also are doing it. Okay, we have some scholars who used to go in the presence of the 8th Imam alayhi salam and ask Allah for their hajat in that presence, and they would be given. Okay, these were the Sunni scholars doing also this. Okay, so this used to happen, but rarely these things have happened. Now, the Shias on the opposite side invoke their pleasure on the Sahaba also. There was no insult of Sahaba and the companions of the Prophet. There's respect for the Sahaba then. Okay, they prayed in the mosque of the Sunnis also. This was where it had reached. Now, Ibn Jawzi explains the same incident a bit more in detail, that the groups of Sunnis and Shiites mingled together and proceeded to the grand mosque in the city. They prayed together. Not only they prayed together, when they were going for ziyarah now, the locals would, celebrate and throw coins on them. That's how it had become a festive mood. Now, one of the economic benefits, and this is where I keep on saying unity brings barakah, barakah wallahi. Allah wishes to see us united and bring the barakah. We go through the Quran. All the wars the Muslims passed through, and they were victorious when they united. The moment they disintegrated, they divided, and you see the divisions, what it costed. Yeah. So they say that prices of wheat, prices of basic food materials came down. Okay, this is the barakah of unity. Now, Sheikh Rasul Jafarian gives another beautiful example in the 8th and 9th century in Isfahan, in Iran, basically. In Iran, there were the the Muzaffarid dynasty. So these were the Shahs and the kings who were really promoting bringing the Sunnis and the Shias together. So the examples are given by the inscriptions. So inscriptions are, you go in this mosque, the inscriptions are there. You look at the coins, you look at the stamps. So you look at those inscriptions, you see that very strangely, okay, this is where it had reached the unity. That the names of the 12 imams and the caliphs were together in one coin, in the coins, minted together. To that extent, even in the mihrab of the masjid, okay, in the mihrab of the masjid, the names of the 12 imams and the caliphs were written together. This is where the unity had reached. Okay, now this was not only in Isfahan, but in the whole Muzaffarid dynasty. And that is why Sheikh Rasul Jafarian quotes Andre Goddard, who is a Western scholar. He says that the relationship was so beautiful, it had spread to the whole Muzaffarid dynasty. This is fifth area. The sixth area is the area of social issues, and seventh will be political. Now, if we ignore all the five areas, I believe the sixth and the seventh area is something which is needed a lot in the present time we're living in, with the massacre and the genocide happening in Gaza. We more than more need that Muslims need to unite, at least on these issues, socially and politically. Okay, so social example was an example. I just found this example in Ibn Jawzi's Al-Muntada, where he discusses where Shias and Sunnis united against a police person who was bribed and was corrupt. And they took him to task, and then that police was imprisoned. Okay, this was just a small example to show of a social issue. Now, social gatherings are happening, but once a year. For example, we have iftar together. Okay, but these are not enough. We need to have more of them, and then plan. When we meet together, we plan for the future of the ummah. What's going on today, we are seeing what's going on. Not only that, in the West also we are seeing. And with the far right governments coming in, we are seeing the immigrants, what they're facing. If Muslims don't sit down together, I don't know what the future is looking like. Yeah. And the seventh final issue is the political unity. So one example is the very brief unity between Shias and Sunnis in 1920. So after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, you notice that the Sykes and the Picot, if I'm mentioning the right, Sykes and the Picot agreement was signed between the Western powers, secretly signed, where they divided the cities and the countries of under the Ottoman Empire themselves. Yeah, British took a portion and France took a portion, and they divided the ummah they wanted, the way they wanted it. So the British got Iraq. Now in 1920, Shias and Sunnis united, okay, against the British. These colonialists, they made an uprising against them. Now it wasn't very successful, but what happened was this: see, the British had to deploy 100,000 soldiers. Not a joke, yeah. And that is why they say that a lot of British and Indian soldiers died. The military campaign cost Britain tens of millions of pounds. This is what I'm talking about. If we ummah can come together, we can put a loss all together. And this is what we're seeing with the boycott movement also. When the Muslims, when the people can boycott, okay, when the humanity can sit down together and come together and boycott this regime, wallahi, the effect will be seen. The effect will be seen, yeah. So the effect was such that Britain could not afford another great war anymore. This is what the unity could do, okay? And the final example is the Makkah Declaration, which happened in 2006. Now, unfortunately, there was no follow-up on this, and wallahi, this was apparently just for a period, and it died down altogether. This happened when after the fall of Saddam, there's a sectarian period which was really bad, where Shias and Sunnis were living together, suddenly now become enemies of each other. And then the bombing of Samarra comes in. And this is where every sectarian person became more sectarian. Okay. Now, this is the time when the Makkah Declaration happens. Yeah, that Shias and Sunnis, rather 50 scholars, Iraqi Sunni Shia scholars, united together in Makkah, and they signed a declaration that we are brothers, we are one, we have commonalities, we have to live together. Now, there's always going to be distractions. There are people who don't like this unity. Okay, as I say, the politicians don't like it. The people who are after that Muslims should not unite. So after this declaration, a Sunni a scholar who had signed on this declaration, his son gets kidnapped. All to do what? To distract this person from moving away from this declaration and moving away from this cooperation. Okay, so in the end, there will always be these distractions. There will always be these uh, people who don't want us to unite. But we have to struggle. We have to, in the path of God, be sincere and try and unite together. In the end, we pray to Allah to be able to give us the strength and tawfiq to be able to act upon what we have said and to be able to unite our hearts together. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.